On this Friday night, pushing for answers into the WWII charity affair, the Liberals' stall tactics, and why the Conservatives are demanding a second separate investigation. Canada's new multi-million-dollar deal with a Chinese government-owned firm. The contract with a company dubbed the WWII of airport security. As America's COVID-19 cases climb, tensions escalate.
Her decision to undermine economic growth is devastating.
Why Georgia's governor is suing Atlanta's mayor. And that's Captain Sir Tom Moore to you now.
It really was truly outstanding.
England's national treasure gets knighted.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Sonia Diol.
Good evening and thanks very much for joining us. Well, there's a new development tonight in the WWII charity controversy that is plaguing the Liberal government. The House Ethics Committee has managed to stall a vote until next week on an opposition motion to investigate Prime Minister Trudeau's family ties to the organisation. The meeting lasted nearly 4 hours and included lengthy speeches. Liberal MP Greg Fergus at times even speaking in Latin, and he didn't end there.
Democracy is fragile. If we take a look at the 5,000 years of reliable human history, oral and written history that we can turn to.
Well, the meeting comes after the Federal Ethics Commissioner signalled he will be investigating Trudeau as well as Finance Minister Bill Morneau for failing to recuse themselves from talks about the WWII deal. Abigail Bimman is following the latest developments for us. Abigail?
Sonia, the Ethics Commissioner is already investigating the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. Now, Conservatives are calling for the Lobbying Commissioner to look at whether WWII charity should have registered with the government. This comes after senior bureaucrat Rachel Wernick testified about communications she had with WWII founder Craig Kielburger. The Office of the Lobbying Commissioner tells Global News she has received the letter from the Conservatives, but they don't comment as to whether investigations are underway. The Conservatives and the NDP are pushing for the Ethics Committee to investigate as well. The Liberals pushed back, saying it wasn't the committee's job and it should be left to the Ethics Commissioner.
It's called a fishing trip. We're going out and we're going to see what we can find. We shouldn't do that. We have a commissioner of ethics.
Well, it raises the question whether or not there was attempt to buy political influence. That, to me, is the issue before us.
It's a problem when taxpayer dollars are going out of their hand and then into the hand of the mother of a public office holder. I'll tell you, the only member of the Trudeau family that I want to see at this committee is Justin.
We also heard from Finance Minister Bill Morneau for the first time since the Ethics Commissioner announced he would be under investigation as well. Morneau apologized for not recusing himself from WWII discussions, but he wouldn't answer questions about whether his office was in contact with WWII before the summer grant announcement. This after Wernick testified it was finance officials who first floated the idea of speaking with WWII.
What we heard yesterday from the officials was that they were working to make sure that they could find a way to create the policy and to deliver on behalf of students. I think departments were working together. I don't have any direct ability to answer that question.
Morneau was also asked about any cabinet discussions about his or the Prime Minister's potential conflicts before the decision. He said he couldn't speak to cabinet discussions. On the question of waiving cabinet confidence, the Prime Minister said this week they are still looking at, quote, what further openness they can show. Sonia?
Abigail Bimman in Ottawa. Thank you very much, Abigail. Well, controversy tonight surrounding a decision by the federal government to award a multi-million-dollar contract to a state-owned Chinese company that will supply security equipment for 170 Canadian embassies, consulates and high commissions around the world. The $6.8 million contract to supply conveyor-style X-ray machines to ramp up security was awarded to the new tech company, which is based in Beijing and owned by the Chinese government. The company is reportedly known as the WWII of airport security, supplying technology like state-of-the-art X-ray machines, scanners and bomb detection devices inside airports and around the globe. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister now promising to review Ottawa's purchasing of border security equipment. And for more on the story, you can go to our website, globalnews.ca/globalnational. Now, as COVID-19 plays out, the anxiety is rising over travel. A new Ipsos poll done exclusively for Global News reveals that most Canadians think it's just far too risky to travel to the US. 93% of those surveyed feel it's unsafe to travel to the US this summer. Nearly just as many feel the same about traveling overseas. More than 8 in 10 Canadians, or 85%, want the Canada-US border to stay closed until the end of the year, while just 21% want it to open to kickstart tourism. There are also fears about domestic travel too, with 62% saying it's unsafe to visit another province. Well, Ontario is pushing ahead with its reopening, entering phase 3 of its recovery plan today. Restaurants and bars are open again, as well as gyms and movie theatres. The rules around public gatherings have also been eased. 50 people are now allowed to gather indoors, and as many as 100 people can gather in groups if they're outside. The new rules don't apply to Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara and Windsor-Essex near the US border. Those areas are still trying to lower the number of new cases. A neonatal intensive care unit at one of British Columbia's biggest hospitals has been shut down due to an outbreak of COVID-19. It is not known yet if the cluster inside the NICU at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver is connected to staff or newborns inside the unit. Details about the number of COVID-19 infections have not been released yet either, but strict emergency precautions like wearing a mask are now in place for parents who are visiting their babies. Well, there are still major concerns about the border, with the situation in the United States still very much out of control. The case numbers there are still rising fast. 77,000 people were infected with COVID-19 in just 24 hours yesterday. That has smashed the previous daily record. 138,000 people have died already. And as Jackson Proskow now reports, there are warnings that unless testing ramps up, COVID-19 will continue to run rampant.
In the fight against the pandemic, each day seems worse than the one before.
Things are so dire that people are being resuscitated on stretchers in the hallways. The night before last, I had 4 calls of 4 patients dying.
The number of daily infections, deaths, and hospitalizations continues to grow at a frantic pace across the U.S., setting new daily records in more and more states.
Can we do better? And can we turn this around? I believe we can. This will end, but I want to do it sooner rather than later.
An unpublished document prepared for the White House Coronavirus Task Force found 18 states are in the red zone due to their high levels of cases and should roll back their reopenings immediately. In one of those states, Georgia, the governor is now suing the mayor of Atlanta to overturn her city's mandatory mask requirement.
I'm confident that Georgians don't need a mandate to do the right thing.
I am not afraid of the city being sued, and I'll put our policies up against anyone's any day of the week.
There's so much virus circulating, researchers have warned of an impending disaster unless the U.S. increases its testing capacity to 7 times the level being done right now.
Without this kind of a test, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either you shut down the economy and people have experienced significant learning loss, or you keep things open and you lose hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Currently, it can take up to 2 weeks for results, despite warnings that a delay of more than 3 days can make it impossible to trace contacts to stop COVID-19 from spreading further.
Wear your mask.
Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Well, Japan has seen a spike in cases of COVID-19, reporting its highest number of infections in 3 months. Most of the cases are in Tokyo, where more than 70% of those infected are in their 20s and 30s. Officials say an increase in testing could be behind the surge in cases. And from today, people without symptoms can also get tested. The increase in cases comes a week before the Olympics were first scheduled to start. They're now slated to begin on July 23rd of next year. And the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 around the world is quickly nearing 14 million. The death toll now standing at least 590,000. India now reporting it's topped over 1 million cases. That is the third highest number behind the US and Brazil. As Redmond Shannon now reports, other countries like Spain are also now dealing with numbers that are going up instead of down.
On Friday, India joined the United States and Brazil in reaching more than 1 million COVID-19 cases. 1.3 billion people live in the subcontinent, so the overall infection rate is relatively low, but it is rising fast and could be much higher, especially in rural areas.
As the number were much more in the previous months, now the number of indoor hospitalized patients is decreasing in Delhi. But in the other part of the country, the number is increasing.
India lifted its national lockdown in June. Since then, the virus has spiked in some states, with local lockdowns now in place. The country also struggles with an issue seen across much of the world.
I see so many people without masks, and I'm like, why don't they want to wear any mask?
One apparent positive is that the death rate in India is much lower than in other countries, but experts are not sure why. In Spain, authorities are also imposing local lockdown measures. The country has reported its highest daily infection rate for 2 months. In London, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced plans to further ease restrictions.
Instead of government telling people to work from home, we're going to give employers more discretion and ask them to make decisions about how their staff can work safely.
Brazil reached 2 million infections this week, but the World Health Organization says the curve is levelling off.
There's an opportunity here now for Brazil to push the disease down, to suppress the transmission of the virus, to take control.
The power to take control is in the hands of President Jair Bolsonaro. He has yet to recover from contracting the virus, but continues to insist the economy is more important than controlling its spread. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And the United Nations has launched its biggest fundraising appeal in history, asking for nearly $14 billion to help fight this pandemic. The UN says the number of people needing aid has more than doubled since the start of this year. They now need to reach 250 million people in 63 countries. The money will cover basic health services and things like food, water, sanitation and shelter. The UN estimating up to 265 million people could be facing starvation by the end of the year due to the impacts of COVID-19. It is the third time the organisation has appealed for financial help since the pandemic started. So far, it has received just over $2 billion. Where is Martin Carpentier? Coming up, the fresh focus in the hunt for a Quebec father turned fugitive. Plus, a powerful storm when Mother Nature faces off with Edmonton's hockey arena. Well, it was a powerful summer storm rolling across Edmonton last night. Several streets quickly flooded, causing problems for drivers. Rogers Place, home of the Edmonton Oilers, also got hit with water damage. The arena is set to host several NHL games when the season resumes later this year. Oilers Entertainment Group says it's confident the damage won't delay the start of the hockey season. Toronto also dealing with extreme weather. A heat warning is in place across the city. People have been flocking to local beaches and patios to soak up the sun. Temperatures expected to reach at least 31 degrees Celsius today, but with the humidity, it could feel as hot as 42. In other news, the Quebec man suspected of killing his 2 daughters is still on the run. Police have been looking for Martin Carpentier for 9 days. Now, new evidence is prompting investigators to change their tactics. Our Mike Armstrong is at the command centre tonight with the latest. Mike?
Well, Sonia, after a couple of quieter days, there was a considerable ramping up today. There seems to be more of everything. More officers, more canine teams, more searchers on ATVs. Even wildlife protection officers have joined the search. The focus right now is on checking structures. Police say they found evidence in an RV in the area that showed Martin Carpentier spent time in it and took some items that would help him survive. Anyone with any sort of a cabin or trailer or anything is being asked to check if anyone's been inside. Just to give you an idea of the terrain, there are a lot of forested areas, but this isn't wilderness. There are cottages and cabins all over, a lot of places to hide. But the search does seem to be focused in the same area where Carpentier's daughters' bodies were found last Saturday, 6-year-old Romy and 11-year-old Nora. This is a community on edge tonight. They've now had a fugitive on the loose for more than a week. A crisis center's been set up to help people who might be having trouble coping. Even the local mayor says he wouldn't normally lock his door if he's at home. He's now changed that habit. Sonia?
Thanks very much for that, Mike. Mike Armstrong in Quebec tonight. Return plan demand still ahead. Parents pushing for answers to back-to-school questions. It's an exciting time at the Toronto Zoo with the birth of 2 healthy red pandas. Keepers are now using video cameras to track how they're doing. The zoo is also cautiously optimistic about the cubs surviving. Red pandas are an endangered species. It's estimated there are between 2,500 and 10,000 of them left in the wild. This is the first red panda pregnancy at the zoo in more than 20 years. No word yet on names. Now, normally at this point in the summer, parents, teachers and students are starting to prepare for the new school year. But back-to-school shopping and lesson planning have been put on hold because of the pandemic. Most provinces and territories are hoping to have kids back in class in September. Exactly what that will look like remains to be seen. And as Jesse Thomas explains, parents want answers now.
Amy Hill tends to her vegetable crop. She and her husband David run Snowy River Farms in Cooksbrook, Nova Scotia. They understood the decision to shut down schools back in March when the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, but the at-home learning experience wasn't easy. Issues with shoddy rural internet made it next to impossible to follow curriculum.
We ended up having to just say, you know what, school's done for the year and you're just going to learn, I'll just do math and spelling and different things while we're harvesting.
Counting zucchinis worked then, but to manage the farm, Hill had to hire a caregiver, and at $500 a week, it's something she can't afford much longer. And like many parents, she's wondering what's in store for September and back to school.
We need a plan. We just need to know, what are you looking to put forward? What is school going to look like?
The anxiety over a lack of plan is shared among parents across Nova Scotia. A letter and petition has been sent to Premier Stephen McNeil demanding an education plan be released immediately to allow families to prepare.
I think the challenge right now is that there's so much speculation because we haven't had any direct communication from the Department of Education in Nova Scotia.
While governments work on a return to school plan, epidemiologists tracking the novel coronavirus say a safe return to the classroom in Canada is possible during the pandemic, but will require some significant financial investments.
We need money to hire more teachers in order to have smaller class sizes. We need money to equip all the staff and all the students with masks and face shields. We need money perhaps to build plexiglass barriers between desks.
The pandemic has revealed the essential role schools serve both families and the economy. With parents expected to return to work, they need a safe place for their children. Nova Scotia's Education Minister Zach Churchill said Thursday that students will return to class full-time in the fall. He didn't give any more details. The province will make that announcement next week. Jesse Thomas, Global News, Halifax.
Well, from nuptials to knighting, next, the jubilations that brought the Queen out of isolation. Well, the Queen's granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, has tied the knot in a private secret ceremony in Windsor. The original date for her wedding with Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi was supposed to be in May, but was postponed due to the pandemic. The small gathering included her parents, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, as well as the Queen and Prince Philip. It's the first time Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh stepped out of Windsor Castle since going into lockdown. We'll have to wait to see the photos, though. The newlyweds didn't want to overshadow the next big event that was on the royal agenda. The Queen has knighted Captain Tom Moore. The veteran raised millions for charities during the pandemic and now had a day that was priceless. Goomansingh reports.
Accolades are nothing new for Captain Sir Tom Moore, but this is something special.
I'm absolutely overawed by the fact that this is such a high award that such a get, and from Her Majesty as well. What more can anyone wish for than that? That has been an absolutely magnificent day for me.
Events at Windsor Castle are spectacular, but during the pandemic, there's been next to no activity. The Queen has been self-isolating, but an exception was made to honor the 100-year-old veteran in person. After all, he is considered a national treasure. He served as an officer in the British Army during the Second World War and again during the pandemic as an inspiration. Walking the length of his garden, he raised more than $50 million Canadian for the UK's National Health Service. He was made an honorary colonel of the Army Foundation College and performed on a chart-topping remake of You'll Never Walk Alone.
Walk on through the rain, though your dreams be charred.
Getting ready to meet the Queen and have the sword of King George VI touch him just for a brief moment sent everyone buzzing.
Do you think she'll ask you lots of questions?
Could be.
Cameras were kept at a distance, but the two chatted a while.
What an amazing amount of money.
Never, ever did I imagine that I should get so close to the Queen and have such a kind message from her. That was really outstanding. It really was truly outstanding.
Outstanding for him and his family. Her Majesty making time to engage with each one of them.
Best of luck. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Another highlight in a long life of service. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Sonia Diol. Tonight's Your Canada is a view of the North Saskatchewan River in Edmonton. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.